I'm Yin Yee. I'm a registered clinical counselor and certified sex addiction therapist. I'm here today to talk about triggers and cravings. To be active in your recovery, you should be aware of what might cause you to return to engaging with your addictive substance or behavior. Despite the best intentions and wanting to stay in recovery, you may experience reminders or triggers that bring back thoughts, feelings, or memories related to active substance use or addictive behavior and feel helpless or powerless to stop yourself from engaging in this behavior. By understanding what may be potential triggers for you, you can create a plan to prevent or limit your exposure to potential triggers and give yourself the best opportunity for success. Triggers can be considered cues that might bring about urges or cravings, which can be described as a powerful feeling to engage in your addictive behaviors. While triggers do not mean that a person will relapse, they increase vulnerability to return to past addictive behaviors. Cravings are time-limited and usually only last between 5 to 15 minutes. A craving can be experienced as an urge to use that builds like a wave and then subsides if the urge is not acted on. Cravings can feel intense in early recovery, but I want you to know that cravings will become less intense over time as you continue in your abstinence, but will worsen and become intense again if there is a lapse back to substance use or addictive behavior, even if it is not your original substance or behavior of choice. I hope it is helpful for you to know that cravings will become less intense after a period of time, so it may be helpful for you to identify a number of options for things that last at least 5 to 15 minutes to help distract from a craving to allow it to subside. Examples could be going for a walk, calling a friend, doing exercise, reading a book, drawing, coloring, engaging in a craft, or playing with a child or dog, or just a few possibilities. Do you think any of the examples would be ones that you'd like to do, or can you think of any examples of activities that you could do to distract yourself from a craving? Let's talk about what might be triggers for you or what might bring about a craving. Triggers can be external or internal. An example of internal triggers may be thoughts, feelings, dreams, or memories of using or past addictive behavior. Thoughts that you might have might be, just this once, nobody will know, I earned this or I deserve this, or could involve finding excuses to validate use, such as, I have to go for a drink with my boss in order to get that promotion, or one drink won't hurt might be examples. Memories of past use or pain from past experiences is another example, where you romanticize your past addictive behavior as, that was such an awesome time in my life when I was using and partying, and not remembering how unmanageable your life was and what some of the consequences that resulted from your use. Or remembering a past relationship ending and feeling the pain of the breakup and wanting to use to avoid the painful memory. External triggers may be people who you used to use with or someone that reminds you of something from the past, places where you used to use, or if seeing something would drive you to want to use. This might include things like paraphernalia, having money in your account, something on the internet, situations such as celebrations, which could be weddings, sporting events, parties, leisure activities, family events and deadlines, successes or failures, or even hearing bad news. Triggers could also come from anything that engages any or all of the 5 senses: touch, smell, sight, hearing, or taste. I'd like to share an example of each of the senses to hopefully encourage you to identify for yourself what might be potential sensory triggers. For touch, it could be holding a spoon that reminds an individual of using a spoon for their past heroin use. For smell, it could be driving by a brewery or bakery and smelling yeast, which reminds them of their past alcohol use. For sight, it could be driving a particular route or in a certain neighborhood to remind them of where they used to meet their dealer. For hearing, it could be hearing the clinking of glasses that reminds them of drinking. For taste, it could be tasting a certain flavor, such as cola, which could remind them of drinking rum and cokes. Sometimes the sensory cues may be obvious, or they can be more subtle, which can stimulate the subconscious parts of your brain that can generate an association with your past use. Triggers do not automatically lead to relapse, but they can increase your vulnerability to using. It can be a seed that grows over time to an eventual relapse, and they could be the straw that breaks the camel's back if you're not actively engaged in your recovery process and self-care. Triggers are not necessarily random. Often 80% of triggers can be avoided through making significant changes in your behavior and habits and being aware of potential pitfalls. Having said that, 20% of triggers are unavoidable and can occur even despite your best intentions to be mindful in your recovery. Triggers are individualized based on your past experiences, but there can be universal triggers, such as watching a commercial advertising an alcoholic drink, or walking by a patio on a hot summer day when someone is having a glass of wine or a pint. Triggers are not always felt, often activated in your subconscious. Studies have shown that the brain can react strongly in response to a stimulus, such as a picture of a drug, without the individual noticing any changes in their feelings. Subconscious cues are dangerous because they may reinforce an individual's desire to use without them even being aware of it. That is why it is crucial to be aware of potential triggers so you can develop an action plan to avoid them as much as possible. Triggers can also be activated by exposure to things that are associated with addiction, even if it does not relate specifically to a personal experience with a particular trigger. An example of this may be seeing someone else smoking marijuana. Even though that's not your substance of choice, seeing their enjoyment could remind you of a romanticized memory of when you were feeling good when you last used. Let's go into more detail about triggers. Are you aware of any triggers associated with certain times of day? Examples could be certain days of the week, maybe Friday on the way home from work because it's the end of the work week. Any evening after work or even payday could be examples of this. Please feel free to write down any time triggers that may apply to you. How about locations? You may be triggered by seeing or being reminded of anywhere you used to use or engage in your addictive behavior. Examples could be your home, certain rooms in your house, a bar, a sporting arena, a dealer's house, your car, a certain neighborhood, or a casino are just a few examples. What do you think would be locations that may be triggering for you? It may be helpful for you to take some time to jot these down. Activities do you think may be triggering for you? These may be activities that you may have been doing the last time you used, either before or after the use. Examples might be eating out at a restaurant, going to a bar, watching sports, surfing the internet or social media, playing video games, or listening to a certain kind of music are just a few examples. What do you think your activity triggers might be? Let's talk next about the types of people who may be a trigger for you. Examples of this might be coworkers, friends, a partner, a dealer, being alone, or anyone that you've ever used with or engaged in addictive behavior with. Are you able to name who in your life may be a trigger for you? Is there a way to avoid the people that you identify as being a trigger, or limit the amount of contact you have with them if you aren't able to avoid them? Is work or school a significant part of your life? Were you working or in school when you were engaged in active addiction? Were there or are there things directly or indirectly related to work or school that would be triggers for you? Examples of this may be deadlines, slow or boring times, a difficult project or material, fights or conflicts with coworkers or classmates, or criticism from your supervisor, boss, or professor. Would any of these be triggers for you? Another trigger for use may be your finances. This could be your own or your family's, and the things that I'd like to invite you to consider would be paying your bills, being short on funds, unexpected extra money or a bonus, or a financial loss or loss of job. You may even notice that you have a trigger around payday. Do you think any of these finance-related examples would be triggers for you? I'd like to ask you to consider your physical state next. Can you think of or remember in the past any time when you might have been triggered to use from a physical state? This could be feeling tired, so using a substance to keep you up or give you a boost, using a substance to help you sleep, or believing that you can't fall asleep unless you use are examples. Other physical states to consider are when you're feeling pain, so using a substance to take away or numb yourself from the discomfort, or engaging in an activity to distract yourself from the pain, such as video gaming or pornography use, or simply when hungry or thirsty. Do you identify any of these physical states as a time when you used or engaged in addictive behavior as a response? Can you come up with some ideas to address your physical needs that would help reduce or mitigate cravings? How about feelings? Can you think of times in the past when emotions preceded you wanting to use or engage in addictive behaviors? Examples of this might be anxiety, frustration, depression, boredom, guilt, shame, feeling burnt out, and even joy. It isn't only negative emotions that may trigger use, but positive ones as well, such as to celebrate something. When you think back to when you used or engaged in addictive behaviors, can you remember if they were common feelings that you experienced that would cause you to think about using? I'd like to talk next about interpersonal relationships and how you relate with others. I'd like to invite you to consider how your exchanges with others go, and not necessarily the people themselves, which we already explored earlier. Some examples of this would be if you've been triggered in past use because you were feeling misunderstood, judged, or criticized, to fit in, to lower your inhibitions, or when angry or resentful of someone else. Do you relate with any of the examples shared, or do any different ones come to mind when you think about an interaction with someone in the past that led you to use when you were feeling or thinking about the interaction? I'd like to ask you to consider major life events next. You might need to think further back in time for examples of this. It could be the passing of someone you knew or were close to, any relationship status change, marriage, separation, divorce, or breakup, a change or loss of job, including a promotion or retirement, moving residences or city, a significant change in your health, or legal difficulties are only a few examples. Can you think of anything in the past that led to your use or addictive behavior? Are you aware of any upcoming events in your near future or on the horizon that may be difficult to navigate? that when I describe possible triggers that you are able to identify significant ones that you have that could impact you. When you're able to identify possible triggers for yourself, you can take the time to develop healthy coping mechanisms to deal with these triggers when they arise. I want to remind you that cravings are normal, that they will happen, and they only last 5 to 15 minutes. When we become aware of the short-term nature of cravings, it would be helpful to learn tools to delay taking any action. If you notice that the craving does not dissipate in that period of time, it may be that you're still exposed to the stimulus that's activating the craving, so it would be most helpful to change your environment. Once you're able to deny an urge once, it will become easier over time to repeat this. And over time, you'll experience fewer cravings, and the ones that you do have will diminish in intensity. As cravings are only short term, it would be helpful to come up with different ways to distract yourself to allow it to subside. It may even be as simple as changing your environment, whether it's changing the room that you're in, going outside if you're inside, moving if you're still, going to support group meeting in person or finding one online, generating a list of activities that you can do if you become aware of a craving. Play the tape through if you're about to use. Talk it through on your own or with a supportive friend what would happen if you were to use and if that is what you really want for yourself. Talk to someone about your cravings so you can get it out in the open. The earlier in recovery you can identify and successfully respond to triggers, the greater your chances for prolonged abstinence. Put into perspective that urges and cravings are normal and that they will pass. It may be helpful to develop a saying or motto that you can say to yourself when you notice a craving, such as, "This will pass," "I've survived worse," or saying out loud what your long-term plans or goals are for yourself, such as, "I want to go back to school and I won't be able to if I use," or "I know I want more out of my life and I'm worth it." Remind yourself that even though you feel uncomfortable or uneasy, that this won't last forever. You could even develop an alternative thought or say something that you know is more beneficial or fun for you. "I want to go hang gliding and I want to be able to enjoy every minute of it." Or, "I want to hike Machu Picchu and I want to be able to wake up in time to watch the sunrise." Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.